It's a win-win for the Kings and Quinton Byfield. We discussed that and more on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we are on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network, also host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, match with Indeed. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So I received a message on X today from a listener to the show, HB LA Kings fan, and they said the shows lately have been a bit depressing. And is there anything good to talk about? Well, yes, I think today we are going to be getting into some good for the LA Kings, and we will start with the Quinton Byfield contract extension. The deal is good for both the player and the team. If you missed it, the LA Kings announced on Monday that they had signed young forward Quinton Byfield to a 5-year contract extension worth $31.25 million with an average annual value of $6.25 million. So Q is now the 4th highest paid King in terms of average annual value. He is trailing Drew Doughty, who makes $11 million a year, Kevin Fiala, who makes $7.875 million, and Anze Kopitar, who makes $7 million per season. Only Mikey Anderson is signed for longer than Quinton Byfield. Mikey's under contract through the 2030-31 season. Kevin Fiala also is under contract, like Byfield, through the 28-29 season. So why is this a good deal for both sides? Well, we had wondered if the Kings and Byfield would agree on a bridge deal, a shorter-term deal that would get him eventually to a longer-term deal, or would the Kings invest the max length that they could with an 8-year extension? Now, Byfield didn't really want a bridge deal. He was looking for a nice raise and a little security, and the Kings likely wanted to protect themselves a little bit and didn't want to completely come all in on an 8-year deal. So basically, the two sides met in the middle. Byfield's happy because he goes from making less than $1 million per season to over $6 million, and he will still be ready for a big contract when this one expires. He'll be 25 when this deal expires and be ready to get an even bigger deal from hopefully the LA Kings because he's played so well. And the Kings are happy because they look into, this major piece that they hope is a major piece of their team, and they get him for the foreseeable future at a very reasonable price. Both sides, again, are happy. It's a fair deal for both sides. Now, the Kings are obviously confident that they know what they're going to get in Quinton Byfield, but he has had some health issues, and he's only had the one really solid NHL season. So that's why they decided not to go all in on Quinton Byfield just yet, but we could see them do that possibly with his second contract. Either way, again, this is a good deal for both sides. Quinton's happy, the Kings are happy, and let's give the much maligned Rob Blake a little bit of a stick tap on this one. As for Quinton Byfield, he is still just 21 years old. Obviously, a lot has been expected of him since the Kings made him the number 2 overall pick in 2022. He is seen as hopefully the heir apparent one day to maybe the greatest LA King of all time in Anze Kopitar. No pressure there. Last season, Q really showed some nice glimpses of greatness. When I first took over the show 2 years ago, Quinton Byfield was a major topic of discussion. Many Kings fans had already passed judgment on the still teenager. He was a bust. The Kings should have drafted Tim Stützle over Byfield. Quinton's fragile. He can't stay healthy. And while many like me preached patience, it wasn't like there wasn't some evidence to support what the doom and gloomers were saying. Parts of 2 seasons in LA, Byfield did have some issues staying healthy. And over those 2 seasons, he totaled 8 goals and 24 points in 93 games. Even those of us that still believed in Q and were saying, don't rush to judgment, in the back of our minds, we were probably a little bit concerned if we were honest. Now, it did seem that Q was a bit awkward at times when he was first getting started, but he's still young. He's growing into a long, lean body. There was a lot of times where he would hit the ice, but it all seemed to kind of come together last season. And I think a lot of fears have been calmed and a lot of minds have been changed when it comes to Quinton Byfield. A breakout season for Q. He played 80 of the 82 games, posted career highs across the board, 20 goals, 35 assists, 55 points. Now, he did have a bit of a slump late in the season. He went 19 straight games without scoring a goal before he finally got that 20th goal of the season. And there was some talk about maybe some health issues with him last season. Maybe he hit a little bit of a wall playing in that many games at a high level, or maybe there was some underlying health issue. But regardless, still a great season for Quinton Byfield, a season again that proved to a lot of people, see, this guy is a special talent. Just give him a little time. And we, again, got a few really nice glimpses of what he could possibly be. And he should only get better as we go along. Solid season for the 21-year-old Quinton Byfield last season. So why should we be optimistic that this is just the beginning? Well, I think the obvious is that, again, Q proved to himself and his teammates that he can play at the NHL level and at times excel at the NHL level. Of course, consistency is what really sets apart the good players from the great players. So he's got to do it over an entire season. He's got to do it for multiple seasons. But I think there were 2 moments in particular, 2 goals that he scored that really lifted his confidence and the confidence of the fans in him, where he really showed off the skills that he has. He had a power move to the net in a game in Montreal on December 7th. And then, of course, the goal of the year candidate in the NHL, February the 20th at home against Columbus. In particular, that goal against the Blue Jackets. That's just a play you don't see often. The ability for him to process things quickly at full speed and finish with an amazing skill move. That was a great, great goal. And again, gave us a glimpse of what some of the special things Quinton Byfield can do. He is still developing and maybe even still growing a bit. He's 6'5", 220 pounds, and it's certainly possible he can get a little bigger. I think it's definitely possible he can get a little bit stronger. But he's still learning how to use his size and his reach, and that should only get better going forward. I also think that he's a very instinctive distributor, which should help him out if he does, in fact, move to the center position, which is a lot being talked about a lot. We'll get into more on that in a minute. But I think probably the best thing about Quinton Byfield, he skates hard every shift. He is going to get better. How much better is still to be determined, but it's hard not to be excited about the future of Quinton Byfield. Now, we did hear from Quinton Byfield earlier today. He met with the media on a Zoom call. The Kings have made this available on their YouTube channel if you want to check it out for yourself. But some of the highlights of the interview with the media, Q said he was obviously excited about the deal and that he wants to be a King for life. And even though players say things and maybe as it goes along, Q, who's a young guy, maybe he learns that this is in a lot of ways a business and you got to do what's best for yourself. But it was still cool to hear Q say he wanted to be a King for life. Now, there was a lot of talk in this media availability about him moving to center. And just from his answers, it certainly seems like there's definitely been the discussion and that he is expecting to play center next season. He said he was very confident playing center, that he's played that position his whole life. He talked about watching and learning from Andre Kopitar and Philip Deneau, said he was excited about the possibility of centering a line alongside Kevin Fiala on his wing. He said that playing center will open up the game in different ways for him and that he'll get more puck touches. And I think the biggest comment he made was he was kind of asked, is there a transition period for you at center, or could you play tomorrow and be ready to go at center? And he said he was confident that if the season started tomorrow without training camp or practices, he'd be ready to go at center. So clearly he has the confidence that this is something that he can do at this level. So obviously, if he does move to the center position, there are more defensive responsibilities. His positioning on the ice will be different. And of course, he will need to work on his faceoffs as well. Now, I've been a bit cautious about this move. I don't want him to get in over his head while he's still learning the NHL game. But again, it does seem like that's going to be the case for Quinton Byfield. And if so, the Kings have decided, if it's true, that it's time to get him at his natural position and, again, be stronger down the center, which is something the Kings were hoping to do last year when they acquired Pierre-Luc Dubois. So it has been mentioned by me and others that the ultimate plan is for Quinton Byfield to one day follow Anze Kopitar and be the Kings' number one center. Now, that is a lot of pressure, but I will say, by all accounts, Q seems like the way he carries himself, the way he talks, he's very mature for his age. He seems like he's really grounded. I think he's very thoughtful in what he says. He doesn't seem, when he's playing, he doesn't seem to get too high or too low. He does have fun out there, which I think is great, but he doesn't ever seem to get too frustrated or anything. I think he's confident, but I don't think he's arrogant at all. And obviously he has a long way to go to fill the shoes of Anze Kopitar, but I will say he does seem to come from that Kopitar type of a mold, right? He's got the size, he's got the confidence, but he's not overconfident. Just seems like a good guy on and off the ice. So that's the ultimate plan, and fingers crossed that one day Quinton Byfield will be ready to take over as the Kings' number one center and just carry that kind of high standard that Anze Kopitar has brought the position forward for the Kings for many years to come. We're going to talk about some of the other young Kings, and we'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, no matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed, because with Indeed, it is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Indeed Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of qualified candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your must-have job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Well, with the Quinton Byfield signing, the Kings now have two restricted free agents left to sign, defenseman Jordan Spence and forward Arthur Kaliyev. We're going to talk more about those two guys in particular in a minute. According to Puckpedia.com, the Kings have $2,910,000 of cap space remaining, so we'll expect the deals to get done here in the near future for Jordan Spence and Arthur Kaliyev. So Quinton Byfield obviously took a nice step forward this past season. Who among the Kings' younger players, the players that are expected to be on the roster next year, 25 years or younger, who amongst those guys is ready to take the next step, kind of like Quinton Byfield did this past season? Well, let's take a look at those players. We're going to go by age, oldest to youngest, and we'll start with 24-year-old Akil Thomas. Obviously, not a big sample size for Akil, but he did have a brief but exciting NHL debut last season. In just 7 games, he scored 3 goals. Clearly, no one is expecting for him to have that kind of production over a full season. But it was nice to see him, get a glimpse of a player that finally got his chance, and he showed that the moment wasn't too big for him. Now, he's a guy that can play center or wing, 6 foot tall, 175 pounds, known for his skating. We talked about the Quinton Byfield goal against the Blue Jackets. Well, the AHL version of that goal was a goal scored by Akil Thomas last season in overtime against the Calgary Wranglers. Thomas went end-to-end, finished off with a spin move and a backhand shot to score the game winner in overtime, ending that game. It was an amazing goal and a little glimpse of what kind of skill Akil Thomas has. Now, he still has a long way to go to prove that he can be an everyday NHL player, but it looks like he's going to get his chance this coming season, and I'm excited to see what Akil Thomas can do with a full NHL season under his belt. Up next is 23-year-old Alex Turcotte. It's been a hard road to the NHL for the former 5th overall pick in 2019, plagued by injuries, including a couple of very difficult concussions, but it looks like he's finally going to get his chance at being a full-time NHL player this season. He's also a player that can play center or the wing. Now, he's only 5'11", but a pretty solid 185 pounds, not afraid to go to the net or battle in the corners. Now, Turcotte has had a few nibbles at the NHL, 12 total games over 2 seasons before this past year when he finally played 20 games for the LA Kings and scored his first career NHL goal. Like Thomas, Turcotte is expected to be a bottom 6 forward, but if Quinton Byfield does in fact move to center, who's going to play on that top line with Kopitar and Kempe? It's going to be a very interesting decision. It's possible it could be Turcotte or Thomas. If so, that would be an amazing opportunity for either one of those guys to perhaps do what Quinton Byfield did when he was moved up to the wing on that top line and kind of get a jump start on his career. Also 23 years old is defenseman Jordan Spence. After playing a total of 30 games over 2 seasons, Spence got his chance to be an everyday NHL player last season as a member of the third pairing on the defense alongside with Andreas Englund. 71 games, he had 2 goals and 22 assists. However, just 7 points while quarterbacking the Kings' second power play unit. He did finish the season as a +5. Now, Spence proved to be a reliable defender and puck mover, 5'10", 180 pounds, and some Kings fans were concerned about him being overpowered or outmuscled by bigger forwards around the net or behind the net in those puck battles in the corners. But Spence used his speed, quickness, positioning, and smarts to rarely put himself in a position where his size was a detriment. Now, it'll be interesting to see if Spence stays on the third pairing or if he moves up to fill the position of the departed Matt Roy with Brant Clark, who we're going to talk about in a minute, ready to take a bigger role. Also be interesting to see if Spence is still utilized running the second power play unit or not. It will be, I think he's expected to provide a bit more offense this coming season, especially if he does get those minutes on the second pairing and on that second power play unit. But again, a solid rookie season for Jordan Spence, but I do expect a little bit more from him offensively this coming season. I'm going to keep 23-year-old Arthur Kaliyev on this list for now. I admit I'm holding out hope that the Kings can convince the talented but inconsistent forward to give the Kings another shot after he made a trade request last season. But he has asked out of LA, frustrated with his role and his minutes, and the Kings have said they're going to try to accommodate him. There was a report the Kings tried to move him at the NHL draft, but there were no takers. I find that hard to believe. He seems like one of those perfect guys that could flourish in the right place, in the right situation. Now, again, I'd love to see the Kings and Artie give it one more try with the promise to him of giving him a defined role and sticking with that for at least the first couple months of the season. After that, if he hasn't, held up his side of the bargain by having some production, being a bit consistent, then both sides can say we gave it our best shot and it's time to move on. You could always trade him during the season or at the trade deadline. But 6'2", 210-pound winger, he has shown he's got a very good shot, but he's also not the type of player that is great at creating his own shot. He seems like he would be a perfect player on the wing on the Kings' second power play unit, but only able to produce 3 power play goals this past season. Again, he was kind of in and out of the lineup on and off the second power play unit, but he scored double digits in each of his first 2 seasons in the NHL, but last year he dipped to 7 goals and 15 points in 51 games. We'll see what happens with Arthur Kaliyev. Probably not going to be with the Kings much longer, but if they can give it one more try, I'd love to see it just eventually work out, see him get a chance and run with it, but it's not looking great, obviously. 22-year-old Alex Laferriere was a huge surprise last season, not expected to make the Kings roster, but he took advantage of an opportunity due to injury. He ended up playing 81 of 82 games for the Kings last season. His first pro season, the Harvard product, put up respectable numbers, 12 goals, 23 points. I think the former third-round pick and in 2002, I think he's the guy I would tab that has the best chance to make a decent jump this coming season. And he probably will get the best opportunity to replace Quinton Byfield on the top line. Solid 6'1", 205 pounds, has a good scoring touch. I think he does need to use his speed and size a bit more. I think that he needs to be more effective going to the net, crashing the crease, being a net front presence, looking for rebounds, and really show a desire that he wants to go to the net and battle for position. I know Jim Hiller has said they're looking for more of that from their players. I think Alex Ferrier is a guy I would specifically go to and say, we need more of this from you. We're going to give you a great opportunity to play on the top line if they decide to do that. And I think if he can embrace that, then he could really be an important player for the Kings next season. Finally, we've got 21-year-old Brant Clark. Other than Quinton Byfield, the most exciting young player the Kings have. In his first full pro season, the 8th overall pick back in 2021, was one of the top scoring defensemen in the AHL. He had 10 goals and 46 points in just 50 games. He did get a taste of the NHL playing 16 games for the Kings. Of course, scored a spectacular overtime game-winning goal and a breakaway to beat the Boston Bruins in Boston for his first career NHL goal. That was one of the special moments of the season for the LA Kings. Obviously, a special moment for Brant Clark, and hopefully just at the start of these special moments that we'll see out of him. He is the best offensive defenseman prospect the Kings have had since Drew Doughty came on the scene. I'm expecting Clark to certainly get a full-time NHL job on the third pairing, possibly with the chance of moving to the second pairing if he plays well, or if Jordan Spence isn't as effective as the Kings think Clark could be. Now, there's also a strong battle between who could run the Kings' second power play unit between Spence and Clark. And while Clark's offensive abilities are obviously there, his defense is still something that needs to improve, certainly at the NHL level. But I'm confident that he can take care of that and be a reliable NHL defensive defenseman. But obviously what makes him special is going to be what he does with the puck on his stick. Again, 6'2", 200 pounds, still growing. He did get pushed around a little bit physically, I thought, in his stint with the Kings. But again, it's something that he can grow into with more experience, kind of understand positioning, things like that. And I think that eventually he'll be a very fine, effective defensive player. But again, really excited about what Brant Clark could do on the offensive side of things for the LA Kings. Give them a bit of a different element out there from their defensive side of things. Up next, we're going to talk about some exciting news for some Kings prospects. That's next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets that I'm in the mood for. Major League Baseball, golf, soccer, NASCAR. It's never too early to also get bets down on your favorite NFL team for the upcoming season. Now, I know what you're thinking. Sports betting not yet legal in California. However, you can still sign up at FanDuel, browse the latest betting odds of your favorite sports and teams on the Sportsbook app, and get in on the action from anywhere with their free games featuring real cash prizes. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There is something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Well, we talked about the future and the young core that the LA Kings have and hopefully can build around for years to come. Keeping the theme going, Kings insider and friend of the show, Zach Dooley, posted today that 4 Kings draft picks are taking part in the World Junior Summer Showcase. Now, each summer, players are invited to this National Junior Evaluation Camp, and the event is part of the process that ends up selecting the rosters for the World Junior Championship teams. For the U.S. squad, you have Kings draft picks Matthew Mania, Hampton Slukinski, and James Reeder getting invited. Mania, a defenseman, is a 5th-round pick of the Kings back in 2023. Slukinski, a goalie, was a 4th-round pick of the Kings in 2023. And Reeder, a winger, was a 7th-round pick of the Kings this past draft in 2024. And on the Canadian team, Carter George, one of the 4 goalies invited. He was a Kings 2nd-round pick this past year in 2024. That camp is being held at the U.S. Hockey Arena in Plymouth, Michigan from July 26th through August the 3rd, and it includes practices and games against prospects from Canada, the U.S., Sweden, and Finland. Now, if this is something you're really interested in checking out, the NHL Network usually does a pretty good job broadcasting these types of events. I know they have broadcast the Summer Showcase in the past, and frankly, what else do they have right now. They're looking for programming during the offseason. So I would expect that will be available if you get the NHL Network and want to check it out. Of course, the 2025 IIHF World Junior Championships are going to be in Ottawa this year, and that is from December 26th through January 5th of 2025. So we'll see if any of those 4 players for the LA Kings, Matthew Mania, Hampton Sukinski, James Reeder, or Carter George, are able to get on those teams, and that would be a great experience for those guys to represent their country and play against some of the best competition at their age level in the world. All right, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, coming up on Wednesday's show, former Kings player and current analyst Daryl Evans is going to join us, stop by and talk about the Kings offseason, talk about the contract for Quinton Byfield, talk about Byfield moving to center and how he thinks that transition will go. And then, of course, on Friday's show, we'll always have our Kings fan feedback show. Anything that's on your mind involving the LA Kings, this is your chance to sound off or ask questions. What do you think about the Rob Blake episode we had on Monday? Do you think Quinton Byfield, that was a great deal for both sides? And who do you think the next great young Kings player will be to step up next season other than Quinton Byfield? You want to get an email in. The email address is always lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. And you can always leave your comments on the YouTube episodes in the comment section. Also, we'd love for you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram. We are at Locked On LA Kings. And by the way, if you're on X and you want to, if you follow the show account and you want me to follow you back, just let me know. Hey, how about a follow? I'd be happy to do it. I try to follow everybody back that I can tell is not a bot. If you have anything Kings related on your profile, or if I see you've posted or reposted anything Kings related, I'll follow you back. But sometimes it slips through the cracks. And if you haven't been followed back and you want to be, just let me know and I'd be happy to do that. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings go.